let's go to the next question now. You touched on the Supreme Court. That is the topic. It is coming from Kevin Landrigan. First going to Governor Hassan.
Great. It's great to be with both of you tonight. One of the reasons this presidential election, the stakes are so high, and this U.S. Senate race is so important, is that one party may be able to shape the landscape of the Supreme Court for decades to come, with as many as 3 justices. Governor Hassan, how much latitude would you give a President Donald Trump if he's duly elected by the American people when you consider nominations to the Supreme Court and other federal judgeships that will come before the Senate?
Well, thank you, Kevin, for the question. I am proud of the system that we have in New Hampshire where governors nominate people for the court, and the Executive Council, as your viewers probably know, confirm those nominations. And we have a nonpartisan Judicial Selection Commission that recommends candidates to the governor. I've committed and have always taken any nominee from that list of recommendations, and I'm very proud of the fact that over the last year or so, I've made 12 nominations to the court in New Hampshire, and 11 of those have been confirmed by a Republican majority Executive Council. So I know it's possible to work across party lines to do this, which is why I'm so concerned about Senator Ayotte continual standing with her party to block the Supreme Court nomination. I always looked for character, obviously high qualifications and experience as a lawyer, the right kind of temperament in a courtroom, and someone who will always protect the civil rights of every American.
Senator Ayotte, you were against holding a hearing for President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, saying the American people should weigh in on who is appointed by casting their ballots next week. Didn't they weigh in 2012 when they elected Barack Obama?
Well, certainly the American people are going to weigh in on next Tuesday, and they'll cast their vote, and the next president will nominate that individual to serve on the Supreme Court. And we have a divided court right now. This is an important decision in terms of people's constitutional rights and what happens. And also, we have a divided government. And so waiting in and letting the people weigh in, I thought was important. But I also have a very bipartisan record where I have voted to confirm many of the president's nominees, in fact, almost close to 100, and worked to fill members of his cabinet. So I've been able to work across party lines. I will continue to do that. But I also want to make sure whoever is nominated by the next president, that they are qualified, understand what their constitutional philosophy is, and what their demeanor is in terms of serving on the highest court in this land.
You know, with regard to the Supreme Court, unlike any other branch of government, do you think it's appropriate to have lifetime appointments?
I do. It's under our Constitution, and our founders set those appointments up because they want to ensure that there are 3 co-equal branches of government and that branch would not be subject to political influence. And so this is important, and this is obviously an issue I will carefully review on behalf of the people of New Hampshire to make sure that their constitutional rights are protected and the person who serves is qualified.
Same question for you, Governor. Yes.
I certainly do support lifetime appointments in accordance with the Constitution. But, you know, I am very concerned about Senator Ayotte's support for the Supreme Court blockade. What she and her party really have decided to do was bring gridlock to the 3rd branch of government. We do have divided government right now, and often, unfortunately, the executive branch and the legislative branch have been at odds. And it was the Supreme Court that served as kind of a tiebreaker for that. And Senator Ayotte and her party decided to bring gridlock, as they have to their work in Congress, to the court. And just as she brought gridlock to that, she voted with Ted Cruz 5 times to shut the government down, only deciding to, after it was shut down and feeling the political heat of that here in New Hampshire, then she kind of decided she'd be part of a solution. Similarly, she's voted to defund Planned Parenthood 6 times, standing right with her party, as she has stood with the Koch brothers nearly 90% of the time in her first 4 years in office. She has been highly partisan, and she has stood with her party and its backers at very critical times where she could have broken and really helped the people and small businesses
Senator,
in New Hampshire.
You do have the option to respond.
You want to talk gridlock? It's vetoing a bipartisan budget because there's a reduction for business taxes, and then both parties overriding your veto. That's gridlock. That's bringing Washington style to what happened with the budget here in New Hampshire. And, you know, she keeps talking about the government shutdown. Well, the Papers in this state, including the Concord Monitor, the Union Leader, describe the work that I did with Senator Shaheen and other women senators to open up the government. She knows what she's saying is not true. I am one of the most bipartisan senators in the entire Senate. I stood up to Ted Cruz in my own caucus on the government shutdown, and you can go look at what people said at the time, because I led the effort to reopen the government, and people of this state know that.
Governor, you can take 30 seconds or we can move forward.
Well, certainly I'm proud to have Senator Shaheen's endorsement in this race, and I will always stand up for fiscal responsibility. Senator Ayotte had a few facts wrong, but at the end of the day, unlike Washington, what we did, I vetoed the budget. We had a continuing resolution. We kept government going, and then we brought people together and got a compromise. And I encouraged everyone to make the vote in September they did for the compromise budget that had important safeguards to protect fiscal responsibility so we could invest in critical economic priorities moving forward.
All right, thank you, candidates.